Okay, hello guys. Today I'm going to show you how to do some editing of records using Visual C# and SQL Server 2005. Okay, here guys, I have my project here with the name of edit record sample, and then a format.cs here as the default. And then let's drag some data grid view. Okay, once you have done or drag the data grid view, let's change some properties of the data grid view. Okay, and then let's scroll this for a bit. Scroll until you find the selection mode. Here at the selection mode, change this into the full row select. Okay, here guys, and then that's it. Okay, let's design another for a bit. Let's drag some label. See, and then text box also for the editing. Oops, that should not be the one. It should be the text box. Change the text properties of the label into ID. The label 2 in text properties into full name. Let's put there a bit, and then let's drag some button. This one should be, oops. Okay, for the button one, change the name properties of the button one. Change this into btn delete, and then the text properties. Oops. Scroll down, change the text properties into delete. Okay. And then for the button 2, change the text properties into edit. Oops. And the name properties into btn edit. And then okay, we are done deciding. Oh, I forgot to say, I forgot to show you my database. By the way, my database is in here. I have my tutorial database here, and then the phone book table. This is the table we are going to use. And then data fields here is ID and full name with the sample records of ID1, Akosidan, ID2, and Dan. And then okay, let's go back again. Now we're done deciding, and I already show you my database. First thing we're going to do is we're going to display the records into the data grid view. Basically, that's what we're going to, since we're going to display first the records into the data grid view, so that when you double click a records into the data grid view, it will display it into the ID and full name, so that we can edit it or delete it. Okay, now to do that, let's minimize this for a bit. Double click on the form, and let's declare first our import. We're declaring import. Since we are using SQL Server 2005, we want to use the import using system.data.sql client. Okay, now after that, we're going to declare our global variable for SQL connection. Okay, to do that, let's type your SQL connection con is equals to new SQL connection, and then specify the connection string. Let's type here server, or should be data source is equals to dot comma double backslash SQL Express semicolon network library is equals to dbmssocn semicolon initial catalog is equals to, this one should be, or let's just the text so that it will not be confusing. Initial catalog is equals to tutorial, and then semicolon again, the user ID, Cosidan, password, some random password here, and then okay, we are now done specifying our SQL connection. Okay, as you can see here guys, into my SQL connection, my data source is dot and then comma and then double backslash SQL Express. For the data source, I use that because I'm going to use my local computer, or you can specify this using the computer name of the SQL server you are using, or the IP of the SQL server you are using, then comma, and then here you can place the port we need to use. But for example, the database or the SQL server browser is open, and you can configure the SQL server for remote connection. We do not need to place the port anymore here. Okay, and then double backslash, I mean, sorry for that. And then SQL Express. The SQL Express is the instance name of my SQL Server 2005. Network library is my DBMSSOCN. This is the network library when we are using the TCP or IP for network SQL Server 2005. And then initial catalog is just the name of my database. User ID and password is just the SQL Server authentication credential. And then okay, that's it. Specified our declare our global variable for SQL connection. And then after that, let's create a new method here. This method we're going to display the records into the data grid view. Let's type here method to display records into the grid view. Okay, let's type here private void display records. Okay, inside the private void display records, I'm going to use the try catch block. Try catch exception error. Okay, try catch is very useful when we are going to trace some runtime error or some runtime exception. Okay, and then we're going to declare data table. Data table dt is equals to new data table, and then SQL data adapter DA is equals to new SQL data adapter, and then the select query, we're going to select all from phone book comma con, and then oops, I forgot the semicolon, and then after that we're going to fill the data table. con. Now we're going to, since we have filled our data table, we're now ready to display the records into the data grid view. To do that, type here data grid view, grid view 1. That, oh, by the way, data grid view 1 is the default name since I did not rename it. Data source is equals to dt.default view and semicolon. Then in the catch block, let's type here message box that show exception. Oops, it should be error that to string, like that. And then let's call the method. Go into the private void form1 underscore load, and then inside the code in here, let's type here call the method that display records to the data grid view. Display records. Okay, now you're done at the initializing our SQL server connection and then the display records method. Now we're going to test if our program display the records into the data grid view. Okay, let's test it. Okay, as you can see here guys, it already displayed the records we can have here now. Now, next thing we need to do is, or basically we need to do, when I double click on this, it should display the records into here at the ID and then full name, so that I can add whenever I replace the records in the edit button, it will save it, and then if ever I delete the records, it will delete the records also. Okay, now go into the form1.cs design and then into the properties, click on the events here. It should be the one is the alphabetical, the properties in the events. And then after that, find the double click here. Once we double click on this, it will open or create a double click event for the data grid view. So I'm going to double click on it. You can see here guys, this one, the double click. So I'm going to double click it now. We have here now the private void data grid view 1 underscore double click. This is the double click event of the data grid view. Let's type here so that it will not be confusing. Double click or event of the data grid view. Okay, now you should have this private void data grid view underscore double click. Now once we have set up the data grid view 1 underscore double click method, you're now going to display the records or create the code that will display the records into the text box. So start the coding again. We're going to use the try catch again since this is very useful. Try catch exception error. Okay, then let's declare our data table. should not be like that. Data table dt is equals to new data table, and then SQL data adapter DA is equals to new SQL data adapter, and then type here select asterisk from phone book where ID is equals to station plus the data grid view 1. Oops, I'm going to put this a bit here. Data grid view 1, that selected rows 0, that cell should be 0 also, that value, that to string, and then plus con. And here guys, we're going to convert this into convert that to int. Oops, it should be convert that int 16. Okay. Now ready to fill our data table dt. Now we are done loading the records of our phone book where our ID is equivalent to the ID of the data grid view that we select. So basically we're going to select the records or select all the records from our phone book where ID or the ID, the data field ID equivalent into the selected row and the cell 0. Cell 0 is equivalent to the first column, and then the value that to string, and then we convert it into the int. Okay, and then after that, since we already fill our data table, records that we selected are going to be placed into the data table. So we can now place the records that we selected into the text box. Let's type here this, or display now the records to the text box. So since we did not rename the text box again, text box 1, that text is equals to dt dot rows. It should be that rows that, and then 0, that the string, text box 2, and that text is equals to dt dot rows. Okay, now we are done displaying the records into the text box. As you can see here guys, you have the data table row 0, and then column 0, and then row 0, column 1. Okay, as you can see in my database here guys, where is my row 0, column, or row 0 is here, and then column 1 is here, right? So I'm going to display the ID field into the text box 1, since this is for the ID, and then for the text box 2 I'm going to display the field for the full name. That's why, let's go back into the code. That's why, as you can see here guys, I have my row 0 column. This will be the field for the column ID, and the column 1 here is the field for the full name. Okay, so let's check so that we can see if we can display the records into the text box. Okay, let's check. If I double click this, it should be displayed in the text box. Okay, let's double click again. Okay guys, as you can see here guys, it is being displayed. Now, what will be my edit button do? My edit button do when let's say I change the full name into something and then I click the edit, it should save or edit the records into the database. So to do that, stop the coding, double click on the edit button, and then here at the edit button, let's add some try catch block again here. Okay, now in the try catch block again, since you are going to edit something into the database, now we need now to open our connection. So to do that, let's open the connection using the variable of SQL connection con.open. Okay, and then the data table again for loading the records, data table dt is equals to new data table. And then for our SQL data adapter, DA is equals to new SQL data adapter. And then we're now going to select the records of our SQL data adapter. So select asterisk from phone book where ID is equals to text box 1 dot text. DA.fill to fill our data table. Okay, as you can see here guys, my select query is select all the records coming from the phone book where ID is equals to the text box 1. Since we displayed the ID into the text box, we're going to load the records that is being displayed at the text box 1, so that I edit the records coming from the text box ID. It should be refreshed, or the database should be refreshed. And then for the da.fill again, to fill it, and then okay, after that start the editing of the selected record. Do that. Let's type here dt dot row 0 dot begin edit. Okay, and then after that, let's type here dt dot row 0 column 1, and then is equals to text box 2 dot text. Oops. And then stop the editing. dt.rows dot end edit. Okay, now start the editing. We edit the records, or basically the text box record, or the text coming from the text box 2 will be placed into the column 0 and index, or row 0 column 1 of the selected records coming from the phone book. Okay, and then after that we're going to declare our SQL command builder. Declare SQL command builder that allow saving of records. So new SQL command builder BA. Okay, and then after that update the database. And then da.update to do that, dt. And then don't forget to close the connection. This is very useful. Every time you open your connection, you need to close it. Okay. Now we are done for the editing of records. But after that, we're going to display again the records of the data grid view, right? So that we need to refresh the data grid view if the records is successfully edited. So we're going to call the method that display records to the grid view. As you can see here, guys, I created a private void display records method that will display the records coming from the data grid view, right? So this method display the data grid view, or the records to the data grid view. So I'm just going to call this method to do that, so that I will not be going to typing this block of code anymore. So type here display records. Okay, let's test it now if it's really working. I'm going to be editing Akosidan. I'm going to edit this to Akosi Dandan. Let's type here. Let's add some another Dan here. And then if I edit this, full name here should be displayed in the full name here at the data grid view also. Oh, as you can see here, guys, the Akosidan become Akosidan Dan. So to check that, let's go to our database. Database have changed also. Okay, now lastly we're going to do the delete of records now. So for the deleting of records, double click on the delete button. Now we are here at the private void ptn delete underscore click. Okay, as always, use the try catch block again. This is very useful. Very, very useful. Now we're going to open the connection. Since we are going to do something into our database again, open the connection, then the data table again. Oops. Data table, dt is equals to new data table, and then the SQL data adapter plus the new SQL data adapter. Here, since we are going to delete records, our query will going to be delete from phone book where ID is equals to text box 1 dot text, and then the con and semicolon. Okay, here guys, in my SQL data adapter, it is not a select anymore since we are going to delete the record. So to do that, delete from phone book records where the ID is equivalent into the rec or the text box, the text, but I have a few something missing in here. ID data type is integer and text box dot text is string, so I'm going to convert this again. Convert that to int 16 so that it will going to be an integer type, because it will gonna be have a error since ID data type is integer in text box 1 dot text is string. So to do that, we're going to convert this into integer 16. Okay, and then after that, da.fill dt. Now display the changes into the data grid view. So to do that again, let's call the name the data grid view. Data grid view 1. Oops. That data source is equals to dt dot default view, or this one should not be like that. Sorry about that. That is not the wrong, or that is the correct one. We should be closing the or updating the database. So we're going to close the connection or update the database, I mean. So we're going to specify the SQL command builder to allow saving changes to the database. Oops. Should be SQL command builder. DA, and then the update the database. Okay, and then close the connection. Okay, and then after that, we're going to display the changes again to the data grid view, right? So I'm just going to call again the method that display the records to the grid view. Call the method that display records to the data grid view. So just like what I did into the edit button. Display records, and then the message box that show if anything exception happen. Okay, we are done coding, guys. Now let's test the program if it's working. Okay, I'm going to click the ID2 here, display this, and then once I delete the record should be deleted. Okay guys, as you can see, it's being deleted into the data grid view. Let's check our database. Okay guys, only one record is being displayed. So meaning the ID2 and the Akosi or the Dandan full name is being deleted. Okay, that's it guys, and I hope you enjoy about my deleting and editing of records using Visual C# and SQL Server 2005. If you guys like the video, subscribing to my channel would be so much appreciated, and a big thumbs up if you also like the video. And thanks again for watching guys, and goodbye.